The planet of HFY shimmered like a jewel in the vastness of space, its atmosphere an eerie mix of violet and green clouds. It was here that Captain Darius Voss found himself shackled to a cold metallic chair in the heart of the alien queen's fortress, a place whispered about in legends among human colonies as the Hive. Darius wasn't sure how long he'd been there. Time seemed irrelevant when every second felt like hours under the weight of his predicament. Darius had led a squad of elite soldiers on what should have been a routine reconnaissance mission. They were tasked with mapping out uncharted regions of HFY for potential resource extraction. But things went sideways fast when their ship malfunctioned mid-flight due to some unknown interference from the planet's magnetic field. Before they could even attempt repairs, swarms of insectoid drones descended upon them, capturing everyone swiftly but leaving only one alive, him. Now, sitting alone in this cavernous chamber, Darius tried not to let fear consume him entirely. The walls around him pulsed faintly, glowing with veins of bioluminescent light, alive, almost sentient. He could hear distant clicks and hisses echoing through the corridors outside, sounds that sent shivers down his spine. His captors weren't just aliens. They were something else entirely. Something ancient, intelligent, and utterly alien. As if summoned by his thoughts, the heavy doors at the far end of the room slid open with a low rumble. In strode two towering guards, their exoskeletons gleaming menacingly under the dim glow of the pulsating walls. Their elongated heads tilted slightly as they moved with mechanical precision toward Darius, weapons trained on him without hesitation. Behind them followed a third figure, smaller yet radiating authority that made both guards stiffen instinctively. And then she entered, the alien queen herself. Her presence filled the room instantly, her massive form draped in iridescent armor that shimmered like liquid metal. She walked with grace despite her size, each step resonating like thunder against the ground. Her eyes, large and multifaceted, scanned Darius with unsettling intensity, seeming to pierce straight through him. For all her imposing stature, it was her voice that truly unnerved him. When she spoke, it wasn't in harsh tones or guttural growls like her kind often did. It came out smooth, melodic almost, laced with layers of meaning he couldn't fully grasp. "You are different," she said finally, tilting her head curiously. Her words hung heavy in the air between them, carrying implications Darius didn't dare dwell on too deeply. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his breathing. Whatever game she intended to play, he knew one thing for certain. Survival depended on staying sharp, and keeping whatever shred of dignity he still possessed intact. The alien queen circled Darius slowly, her claws clicking softly against the floor as she appraised him like a curious scientist examining an unusual specimen. Her gaze lingered on his face, taking in every detail. His stubbled jawline, the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the way his dark hair clung to his forehead with sweat. To Darius, it felt invasive, almost intimate, though he fought to keep his expression neutral. He didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing fear. "You smell peculiar," she remarked, pausing directly behind him. Her voice carried a strange blend of curiosity and amusement, as if she were discussing a rare flower rather than a captured enemy. Darius clenched his fists but said nothing, unwilling to rise to her bait. The guards flanking either side of the room stood rigid, their mandibles twitching ever so slightly, an indication, perhaps, that even they weren't used to this level of casual interaction from their queen. Then came the moment that froze everyone in place. Without warning, the alien queen leaned forward, her enormous frame casting a shadow over Darius. With deliberate slowness, she extended one clawed hand and, before anyone could react, brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. The gesture was absurdly gentle, almost tender, which made it all the more shocking given the circumstances. For a split second, Darius forgot how to breathe. Her touch sent a jolt through him, not pain, exactly, but something electric, primal. It was as though her mere proximity disrupted the very fabric of reality around him. One of the guards emitted a low hiss, its body visibly trembling, while the other shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure whether to intervene. Even the queen herself paused, her multifaceted eyes narrowing slightly as if she hadn't expected the act to affect her quite so profoundly either. "Fascinating," she murmured, withdrawing her hand but not moving away. There was a glint in her gaze now, something akin to fascination mixed with mischief. "Your species is fragile, yet resilient. So much emotion packed into such frail bodies." She tilted her head again, studying him as though he were a puzzle waiting to be solved. "Tell me, little soldier, do you know why I spared you?" Darius blinked, caught off guard by the question. "I don't care about your reasons," he shot back, his voice rougher than he intended. "If you're going to kill me, get it over with." To his surprise, the queen threw her head back and laughed, a sound that reverberated through the chamber like rolling thunder. It was deep and rich, tinged with a warmth that contradicted everything Darius thought he knew about her kind. "Kill you?" she echoed, her tone dripping with mockery. "Oh no, my dear human. Killing you would be far too easy. No, I have other plans for you." Her words hung ominously in the air, but before Darius could press further, she turned abruptly, her armored tail sweeping gracefully behind her. "Take him to the observation deck," she commanded, addressing the guards. "Let us see how adaptable your spirit truly is." As the guards moved to obey, Darius couldn't help but notice the subtle exchange of glances between them. Whatever camaraderie existed among these creatures, it seemed even they weren't immune to the unease sparked by their queen's unpredictable behavior. And as Darius was hauled to his feet and marched toward another part of the fortress, he couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The observation deck was unlike anything Darius had ever seen, or imagined. The room itself appeared to be carved directly into the living tissue of the hive, its walls pulsating rhythmically, as though synchronized with some unseen heartbeat. A massive viewport dominated one side, offering a breathtaking panorama of HFY-7's surface below. Swirling storms of violet lightning illuminated jagged mountain ranges, while rivers of molten gold snaked across the terrain like veins of fire. It was beautiful in a way that felt almost obscene, a reminder of how alien this world truly was. But it wasn't the view that held Darius's attention. Instead, his focus was drawn to the center of the room, where a circular platform hovered inches above the ground. Chains dangled from its edges, shimmering faintly with an energy that crackled audibly in the air. The alien queen stood nearby, her armored form casting long shadows across the pulsating floor. She gestured lazily toward the platform, and without hesitation, the guards dragged Darius forward and secured him to it. "This will be interesting," she purred, circling the platform like a predator sizing up its prey. "You see, little soldier, I've grown bored. My subjects are loyal, efficient, obedient, but predictable. You humans, however—" She paused, tapping a claw thoughtfully against her chin. "You are chaos incarnate. Unpredictable. Irrational. And yet, somehow, you survive against all odds. That intrigues me." Before Darius could respond, the platform hummed to life beneath him. The chains tightened slightly, holding him firmly in place, while the surface beneath his feet began to glow with an eerie blue light. He felt a sudden pressure in his chest, as though invisible hands were probing at his very essence. Panic surged within him, but before he could struggle, the queen raised a hand, silencing him with a single glance. "Relax," she said, her voice soft yet commanding. "This won't harm you, physically, at least. Consider it an experiment. A test of your resilience." With that, she stepped back, her gaze never leaving him as the room began to change. The walls around them seemed to dissolve, replaced by swirling images that flickered faster than Darius could process. Scenes of war, destruction, and despair flashed before his eyes, each more vivid than the last. He saw battles he'd fought, comrades he'd lost, moments of triumph and failure played out in excruciating detail. Then came memories he hadn't realized he'd buried, childhood fears, forgotten dreams, regrets he'd locked away deep inside. It was as if the queen had peeled back layers of his soul, exposing raw nerves to the harsh light of truth. Through it all, she watched intently, her expression unreadable. Occasionally, she would tilt her head or make a soft clicking noise, as though cataloging every reaction. The guards remained motionless, their forms rigid with tension, though Darius suspected they were just as unsettled as he was. Finally, the torrent of images slowed and faded, leaving him gasping for breath. The platform deactivated, and the chains loosened automatically, allowing him to slump forward. Darius braced himself against the edge of the platform, his legs trembling beneath him. Sweat dripped from his brow, mingling with tears he hadn't realized he'd shed. "Well?" the queen asked, stepping closer. Her voice was softer now, almost gentle. "What did you see? What truths did you uncover?" Darius shook his head, unable to speak. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, shame, grief, all colliding in a storm he couldn't contain. For a moment, he hated her. Hated her for forcing him to confront parts of himself he'd spent years trying to forget. But beneath that hatred lay something else, a grudging respect. She had stripped him bare, not with cruelty but with precision, revealing vulnerabilities he hadn't known he possessed. "I saw enough," he managed finally, his voice hoarse. "Is this what you wanted? To break me?" The Queen chuckled, a low, throaty sound that vibrated through the room. "Break you? No, little soldier. Breaking is easy. What I seek is understanding. Strength forged in fire, not shattered by it." She reached out again, her claw brushing lightly against his cheek. This time, he didn't flinch. "We shall see how far you can go before you crumble, or rise." With that cryptic statement, she turned and strode toward the exit, her guards falling into step behind her. As the doors closed behind them, Darius was left alone once more, surrounded by the pulsating walls of the hive. But this time, the silence felt heavier, charged with implications he couldn't yet comprehend. Whatever game the Queen was playing, it was far from over, and neither was he. Hours passed, or maybe it was days. Darius couldn't tell anymore. Time in the hive seemed to stretch and compress unpredictably, governed by forces beyond his comprehension. He sat cross-legged on the cold metallic floor of his cell, staring blankly at the pulsating walls that surrounded him. The after-effects of the Queen's experiment lingered in his mind like a storm cloud refusing to dissipate. Memories he thought buried had resurfaced with brutal clarity, leaving him raw and exposed. Yet amidst the turmoil, something else stirred within him, a flicker of defiance, stubborn and unyielding. He replayed the events in his head, dissecting every word the Queen had spoken, every gesture she had made. There was something calculated about her actions, almost theatrical, as if she were testing not just his limits but also her own. Why spare him? Why subject him to such an ordeal? Was it mere curiosity, or did she have a deeper purpose? Darius couldn't shake the feeling that he was being groomed for something, though whether as a pawn, a weapon, or something else entirely remained unclear. His musings were interrupted when the door to his cell slid open with a low hiss. 2 guards entered, their movements precise and mechanical, dragging between them a figure clad in tattered armor. It took Darius a moment to recognize the prisoner as Commander Leora Vance, one of the most decorated officers in his unit. Her fiery red hair was matted with dirt and blood, her face pale but defiant. Despite her condition, there was no mistaking the spark of determination in her emerald-green eyes. "Leora!" Darius exclaimed, scrambling to his feet. "What are you doing here?" She offered him a weak smile, though her voice was steady. "Saving your sorry hide, apparently. Though I'm starting to wonder if I should have let them keep you instead." The guards deposited her unceremoniously onto the floor before retreating, leaving the 2 humans alone. As soon as the door sealed shut, Leora groaned and rolled onto her side, clutching her ribs. Darius rushed to her side, helping her sit upright. Up close, he could see the extent of her injuries, bruises blooming across her skin, cuts crusted with dried blood. Despite her bravado, she looked like she'd been through hell. "What happened?" Darius demanded, his voice low but urgent. "How did you end up here?" Leora winced as she adjusted her position, leaning against the wall for support. "Long story short, I tracked your distress signal. Thought I'd swoop in, rescue you, and ride off into the sunset. Turns out these bastards don't take kindly to uninvited guests." Darius couldn't help but chuckle despite the gravity of the situation. "Somehow, I'm not surprised. Did you at least manage to send a message back to HQ?" Her expression darkened. "No. They ambushed us before we could establish contact. Took out half my team before I even realized what hit us." She paused, glancing around the cell. "So, what's the deal with this place? And why are you still alive?" Darius hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. The Queen's bizarre behavior, her experiments, The strange connection she seemed intent on forging, it all sounded insane, even to him. But Leora was sharp. She'd see through any half-truths. Finally, he sighed and began recounting everything that had transpired since his capture, from the humiliating display in the throne room to the harrowing ordeal on the observation deck. When he finished, Leora stared at him, her mouth agape. "Wait, you're telling me the queen touched you? Like, actually touched you? And didn't rip your head off afterward?" "It's complicated," Darius muttered, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "She's different. Not like the others." "Different doesn't mean trustworthy," Leora shot back, her tone sharp. "These things are monsters, Darius. Don't forget that." "I haven't," he replied firmly. "But there's something going on here, something bigger than us. If we want to survive, we need to understand it." Leora studied him for a long moment, her green eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "All right, fine. Let's say you're right. What's the plan, genius?" Darius glanced toward the door, his mind racing. "First, we wait. She'll come for me again. I can feel it. When she does, we'll be ready. And then..." Leora pressed. "Then we turn the tables," he said, a dangerous glint in his eye. "Whatever game she's playing, it's time we started playing back." Though neither of them voiced it, both knew the odds were stacked against them. But as they sat together in the dim glow of the pulsating walls, sharing quiet jokes and reminiscing about old missions, a sense of resolve settled over them. They might be prisoners, but they weren't defeated, not yet. The next encounter with the alien queen came sooner than Darius anticipated. Just as dawn, or what passed for dawn on HFY, began to filter through the bioluminescent haze, the cell door slid open with a hiss. Standing in the doorway was the queen herself, flanked by her ever-present guards. Her presence filled the small space instantly, her multifaceted eyes glinting with an unreadable intensity. "Commander Vance," she purred, her melodic voice sending chills down Leora's spine. "How delightful. Another human to entertain me." Leora didn't flinch, meeting the queen's gaze with steely determination. "Entertain yourself, your majesty. I'm not here for your games." The queen chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound that reverberated through the chamber. "Games? Oh no, my dear. What I have planned is far more enlightening." She gestured to the guards, who moved to seize Leora. Darius lunged forward instinctively, but a swift blow from one of the guards sent him sprawling. "Don't!" Leora shouted, struggling against the guard's grip. "Leave him out of this." Ignoring her protests, the queen approached Darius, crouching beside him. Her clawed hand traced the line of his jaw, forcing him to meet her gaze. "You see, little soldier, your companion has provided me with an opportunity. A chance to observe how bonds of loyalty influence strength and weakness." Darius spat at her feet, earning a sharp kick from one of the guards. Pain exploded in his ribs, but he bit back a cry, refusing to show weakness. The queen merely smiled, unfazed by his defiance. "Take them both," she commanded, rising to her full height. "Let us see how far their unity will carry them." The journey to the queen's new arena was a blur of pain and confusion. Shackled together, Darius and Leora were dragged through labyrinthine corridors, their footsteps echoing against the pulsating walls. The air grew colder, heavier, pressing down on them like a physical weight. Finally, they emerged into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. At its center loomed a massive pit, its depths obscured by swirling mist. "You will fight," the queen announced, her voice carrying an ominous finality. "Not for survival, but for understanding. Show me the true nature of your bond." Before either could protest, the guards shoved them onto a narrow platform suspended above the pit. Chains rattled as they were secured in place, leaving them balanced precariously over the abyss. Below, shapes began to stir in the mist, sinister silhouettes that hinted at horrors lurking just out of sight. "This is insane," Leora muttered, her voice tight with suppressed fear. "We can't fight like this." "We don't have a choice," Darius replied grimly, his eyes scanning the pit. "Stay focused. We'll find a way out of this." As the first creature emerged from the mist, a writhing mass of claws and teeth, their resolve hardened. Side by side, they faced the nightmare unfolding before them, united by a shared determination to survive. Whatever the queen sought to learn, she would find more than she bargained for. The beast lunged upward, its grotesque form twisting impossibly as it propelled itself toward the platform. Claws scraped against the metal edge, sending vibrations rippling through the chains securing Darius and Leora. Instinctively, they shuffled backward, their movements synchronized despite the precarious footing. The creature let out a deafening screech, its multiple eyes locking onto them with predatory hunger. "Watch its tail," Darius barked, spotting the whip-like appendage poised to strike. Leora nodded sharply, her military training kicking in as she dropped into a defensive stance. The beast snapped at them again, saliva dripping from razor-sharp teeth that glinted menacingly in the dim light. Its sheer size made escape seem impossible, but panic wouldn't save them now. With a sudden burst of speed, the creature swung its tail like a lash, aiming for Leora's legs. She leaped awkwardly, her bound hands making balance nearly impossible, but managed to dodge just in time. The tail slammed into the platform with a deafening clang, denting the metal and causing both humans to stumble. Darius grabbed her arm, steadying her before she could fall off the edge. "We need to work together," he shouted over the din of the creature's roars. "Divide its attention." Leora gave a curt nod, her green eyes blazing with determination. Together, they began moving in opposite directions along the narrow platform, forcing the beast to split its focus. It hesitated, its grotesque head swiveling between them as it tried to decide which target to pursue first. Seizing the moment, Darius launched himself at the nearest chain anchoring them to the platform. Using his body weight, he yanked hard, pulling the weakened link closer to breaking point. Meanwhile, Leora drew the creature's attention by taunting it, shouting insults that echoed through the chamber. Enraged, the beast lunged toward her, its claws slicing through the air mere inches from her face. She ducked, narrowly avoiding decapitation, and kicked out with surprising force, striking one of its legs. The impact sent it reeling slightly, giving Darius the opening he needed. "Now!" he yelled, throwing his full weight against the compromised chain. With a metallic snap, the link broke free, sending him tumbling backward. Freed from one restraint, he scrambled to his feet and dashed toward Leora, using his momentum to tackle the beast's leg. The creature howled in fury, thrashing wildly as it tried to regain balance on the unstable platform. Leora seized the opportunity, grabbing hold of the remaining chain and swinging herself around like a pendulum. Her boots connected squarely with the creature's head, the force of the blow staggering it further. Darius joined her, delivering a series of powerful kicks aimed at its vulnerable underbelly. Each strike drove the beast closer to the edge of the platform until, with a final desperate roar, it teetered and fell into the abyss below. For a brief moment, silence reigned. Both humans collapsed onto the platform, breathing heavily as adrenaline coursed through their veins. Their victory was short-lived, however, as the queen's voice cut through the stillness. "Remarkable," she mused, stepping forward from the shadows where she had been observing. Her multifaceted eyes gleamed with approval, though her tone remained inscrutable. "You two are indeed fascinating specimens. Loyalty, courage, adaptability, all traits worthy of study." Darius glared up at her, his chest heaving with exertion. "Is this what you wanted? Proof we can fight? Or are you just getting started?" The queen tilted her head, considering his words. "Oh, we are far from finished, little soldier. But perhaps you've earned a reprieve, for now." She gestured to her guards, who moved to retrieve the battered humans. As they were hauled to their feet, Darius exchanged a glance with Leora, silently reaffirming their unspoken vow. No matter what trials lay ahead, they would face them together. The queen's guards dragged Darius and Leora back to their cell, though this time there was an odd sense of restraint in their movements. It was as if even the stoic warriors were unsettled by what they had witnessed, or perhaps by the unpredictable nature of their sovereign. Once inside, the heavy door slammed shut behind them, leaving the two humans alone once more. Exhausted but alive, they collapsed onto the cold floor, their bodies aching from the fight but their spirits unbroken. "Well," Leora said after catching her breath, her voice laced with dry humor despite the situation, "I guess we showed her." Darius chuckled weakly, leaning against the wall beside her. Yeah, for all the good it'll do us. She's not done yet, not by a long shot. Leora glanced at him, her expression softening. You really think she's playing some deeper game here? I don't know, he admitted, running a hand through his sweat-soaked hair. But one thing's clear, she's fascinated by us. By you. Maybe that gives us an edge. An edge, that was something they desperately needed. As much as they hated to admit it, the alien queen held all the cards. Her motives might be inscrutable, but her actions suggested a level of curiosity that bordered on obsession. If they could exploit that fascination, maybe, just maybe, they could turn the tide in their favor. Days passed in uneasy monotony. The hive seemed quieter than before, almost as if the entire structure were holding its breath. Darius and Leora spent their time strategizing, piecing together fragments of information about the queen's behavior and the layout of the fortress. They knew escape wouldn't come easily, but every detail mattered. Every whispered conversation between guards, every flicker of light in the pulsating walls, it all added up to a larger puzzle waiting to be solved. Then came the summons. This time, when the doors opened, it wasn't the usual entourage of guards leading them out. Instead, the queen herself entered the cell, her towering form filling the space like a storm cloud. Her multifaceted eyes gleamed with an intensity that made both humans tense instinctively. "It is time," she announced, her melodic voice carrying an undertone of finality. "You have proven yourselves resilient, adaptable, resourceful. Now comes the ultimate test, the culmination of my experiment." "What kind of test?" Leora demanded, stepping forward despite the danger. "More monsters? More torture?" The queen tilted her head, considering the question. "No. No monsters. No chains. Only truth." Before either human could press further, she gestured for them to follow. Reluctantly, they obeyed, trailing behind her as she led them through winding corridors until they reached a chamber unlike any they had seen before. The room was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow, and at its center stood a massive crystalline structure pulsating with an otherworldly glow. It hummed softly, resonating deep within their chests. "This," the queen explained, "is the nexus, a conduit to the collective consciousness of my kind. Through it, I will witness your essence, your very soul. And you," she paused, turning to face them fully, "you will see mine." Darius exchanged a wary glance with Leora. Whatever this nexus was, it sounded dangerous. But refusing wasn't an option. The guards stationed around the perimeter made sure of that. With no choice but to proceed, they stepped closer to the crystalline monolith, feeling its energy prickle against their skin. "Place your hands upon it," the queen instructed. When neither moved immediately, she added, "Do not fear. This will not harm you. It will merely reveal what lies beneath." After a moment's hesitation, Darius reached out first, placing his palm flat against the cool surface. Leora followed suit, her fingers brushing against his for reassurance. As soon as their hands made contact, the crystal flared brightly, bathing the room in radiant light. A surge of sensation coursed through them, images, emotions, memories flooding their minds in a chaotic torrent. They saw glimpses of the queen's past, her rise to power, her struggles against rivals, her isolation among her own kind. They felt her loneliness, her yearning for connection, her desperation to understand humanity's capacity for unity and resilience. And then, just as suddenly, the flow reversed. Their own thoughts, fears, hopes, and dreams spilled outward, exposed to her scrutiny. For a timeless moment, they existed in perfect symbiosis, their minds intertwined with hers. The barriers between species dissolved, replaced by raw, unfiltered understanding. When the connection finally broke, both humans staggered backward, gasping for air as though surfacing from deep water. The queen stood motionless, her expression unreadable. For the first time since their capture, she seemed shaken. "You are extraordinary," she murmured, her voice trembling slightly. "Your strength does not lie in weapons or strategy. It lies in your bonds, with each other, with your comrades, with your world. You fight not for survival alone, but for those you love." Darius straightened, meeting her gaze steadily. If you wanted to understand us, why didn't you just ask? Her mandibles twitched faintly, almost like a smile. Because asking requires trust. Something I have only now begun to comprehend. Silence fell over the chamber, broken only by the faint hum of the nexus. Then, slowly, the queen extended a clawed hand toward them. "Go," she said simply. "Return to your people. Tell them of what you have seen here. Perhaps, in time, our races may find common ground." It took a moment for her words to sink in. Were they truly free? After everything they'd endured, the idea seemed almost too surreal to believe. But as the guards stepped aside and the path to the exit became clear, hope began to bloom within them. With cautious steps, Darius and Leora turned away from the queen and headed toward freedom. Behind them, the crystalline structure dimmed, its glow fading into darkness. As they emerged from the fortress into the alien landscape of HFY-7, they found a small shuttle waiting, a gift, presumably, from their enigmatic captor. Neither spoke as they boarded the vessel and initiated the launch sequence. Words felt inadequate to capture the enormity of what had transpired. But as the shuttle lifted off, carrying them away from the hive and back toward the stars, Darius reached over and clasped Leora's hand tightly. "We did it," he said quietly, a grin spreading across his face. "We survived. And we learned something along the way," Leora replied, squeezing his hand in return. "About them, and about ourselves." As the planet shrank into the distance, bathed in violet and gold hues, they allowed themselves a rare moment of optimism. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, they faced it together, and with a newfound sense of purpose.